Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I appreciate that you all took time to join me today. It was a brutal day yesterday in Washington, D.C. I am not a fan, and it was brutal to watch. It had to be terrible if you are a fan. And 41-24. The Raiders offense scored enough points to win a football game. You know, you want 21 or more. And was a game in which the defense was not good. The offense, quite frankly, even though they scored 24 points, was not real good. And in my 6 years of covering the team, it was the worst loss that they've experienced. There were other bad losses, but in those bad losses, I think there were more things of which to be hopeful for. And I told you yesterday that my podcast was going to be short because when things are Tom Osborne, the great legendary Nebraska head coach, once told Nick Saban, "You're not as good as bad as you think you are, nor are you as good as you think you are." And so there are times that as a journalist, I'm not a fan. And so as a journalist, fans can go have all the hot takes in the world. And I really encourage you to make sure you listen to tomorrow's podcast. Um, we're going to really let some of you sound off on the podcast, and you'll see what I mean tomorrow. We're not bringing on guests, but you'll see. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a slight at fans. But when you're in my place and I'm talking about grown men with families, I owe it to every player and coach and every fan to review what I'm about to discuss and to know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't get that luxury if I want to do my job right. In fact, I get irritated with the media sometimes. It's who can have the biggest, hottest take quickest. Not talking about fans, talking about media. And so when I walk in that locker room and I look a player in the eye or I stand in front of Pete Carroll, they may not, and I can tell you I don't think they're going to like everything I have to say today, but at least they'll know that it's not a personal attack. And he went back, did his research. Now, I want you to know I reached out to 3 particular people in the NFL. And let me just say, NFL people are not sitting around reviewing everybody else's film. However, if you have the Raiders on your schedule potentially down the road, you'll be reviewing film. Or if you're a team that has the Commanders on your schedule, not even the Raiders, you're going to review the film. And I reached out to 3 people and asked them for their solid observation of what they felt of the Raiders. I'm going to share a couple of those with you today. One of them I really can't because it was so specific, people would be able to ascertain within a couple of teams who it was. And I'm not going to do that to them, but it was good for my analysis and as I watch things. I want you to know I've watched the game film 3 times now and looked at it and watched it and analyzed it, took a lot of notes, took pages of copious notes. And so let's go through and just say this right up front. This is going to be a no holds barred evaluation of where are the Raiders after 3 games. And I'm not coming at it like a fan, and I'm not coming at it like a fan, like a hater. I'm trying to bring you the honest analysis. So the first thing you want to do is you have to look back before you can look forward. Throughout the 6 years I've covered this team, the only consistency has been inconsistency. There were fans screaming for Gruden to be fired because he was too predictable. There were people that wanted, then there were people that wanted Bisaccia, didn't want Bisaccia. There were people that wanted Josh McDaniels, didn't want Josh McDaniels. Wanted Josh fired, didn't want Josh fired. Wanted Antonio Pierce, didn't want Antonio Pierce. There were those that didn't want Harbaugh, which never made sense to me. I don't know why anyone wouldn't have wanted Harbaugh, but whatever. And then there were people that didn't want Pete Carroll, which I didn't understand. Pete Carroll's a future Hall of Fame coach, one of the best coaches out there. That's factual. You can't argue with the guy's resume. We're going to still get into him presently. We can't argue that resume. I didn't want him. And so the only thing has been inconsistency. And for the Raiders to ever get this thing fixed, if you look back since Mark Davis took over, quite frankly, since the last time they were good, it was a constant turnover of inconsistency. I mean, the trading of John Gruden, the pattern of this franchise. Now, to Mark Davis's credit, he has done everything since giving John Gruden the 10-year, $100 million large contract to fix this. I'm going to say this right up front. And every time I talk about this, I get the Hondo has to say that or he wouldn't get access. When you say things like that, you literally sound like a jackass. Because the team doesn't take away your access for being critical. Look across the league. There's lots of media who are critical. That's just asinine. And it's asinine and it attacks. And if you feel, well, Hondo wouldn't say that because he's friends and doesn't want to hurt people's feelings. No, I have a job to do. And if you believe that about me, then I would encourage you not even to watch this podcast or read anything I write, say, or do. Because if I thought somebody's opinions were skewed based upon their fear of making people angry, then to me, they're not an integrous person. I'm going to say some things today that are going to make some people angry. Some of them being you, a lot of them being team. And that's part of, if you don't want this job being an non-SI beat writer covering one of the iconic franchises in all of pro sports, then don't take it. But put your big boy pants on and do your job. So the first thing is the flood of got to get rid of Brennan Carroll. Pete won't fire his kid. Pete was the wrong choice. This is terrible. All of that. You are entitled to any opinion you want. And I'm going to address the Brennan Carroll situation right up front in a minute. I'm not ducking it. We have to talk about it. It's legitimate. I'm going to address the Pete Carroll thing. I'm going to address a lot of issues, but I'm not going to come at it emotionally because I'm not a fan, and I'm not going to come at it emotionally. I don't want the team mad at me. The way I look at it is if I approach that, I don't care if you guys, the fans, are mad at me or if the team's mad at me. I have a job to do. That is the only way in which I can do my job effectively and with integrity. So let's get right started. The only thing that's been consistent is inconsistency. Okay? I 100% supported the hiring of Pete Carroll. And I want you to know, this won't be popular, but after 3 weeks, I 100% support the hiring of Pete Carroll. I am not wavered one bit. It's not like the man got the job and forgot how to coach. Okay, Pete Carroll, you can be critical of some decisions he's made, and we're going to get into those in a minute. But there is nobody within the sound of my voice, and I know NFL people watch this podcast. There is nobody within the sound of my voice who has a better coaching resume than Pete Carroll. He is a future Hall of Famer. Even if he fails in Vegas, he is a future Hall of Famer. And I will always cede to somebody more qualified than me. Now, there are some things that are fair to question, and I'm going to get into those. But Pete Carroll deserves that absolute, in my opinion, deserves that respect. And I'm going to give it to him whether you want him to have it or not. I don't care. I don't care. So having said that, let me make a couple of other points. Hang on a second. Let me make a couple of other points to you that I think are critically important and I think deserve and need to be discussed. Okay? I have always said, and I maintain this, it is imperative if you're going to hire a coach, you have to let him hire his own staff. He must fail or succeed. He must fail or succeed with his own staff, period. So if you don't like the Brennan Carroll hire, okay, that's fair, but it doesn't matter if you like or hate the Brennan Carroll hire. Pete Carroll should be able to put together his own staff. I'm going to say this right now. Whether you love Antonio Pierce or you hated Antonio Pierce. It was a shame that they felt like he had to be, he had to have Luke Getsy. Okay? Antonio Pierce deserved to hire his own staff. So for people saying it's nepotism, Pete should have to fire, they should step in and fire Brennan. No, and listen, we're going to get into Brennan's performance in a minute. We're going to get into that. We're not going to run from it. But I'm sorry, I do not believe in that. I've never believed in it. You don't ask a coach to come in and lead the team and then tell him how he has to lead. It's just like going to a restaurant and you saying to the chef, I'm going to go in the back and cook. To me, it's asinine type of thinking. If you want to say, I think Pete Carroll made a terrible mistake hiring his son, that's a germane argument. They need to come in and make him. No. And that's being said. So let me continue now. So I've always said you give a coach 20 games. There's 17 game seasons now, so I would give him 21. I think you give him his first year and then 4 games of the next year to get his free agents in line, his draft class, it's his second draft class, etc. I believe that. I maintain it. And to those of you who are longtime viewers of this podcast, you know that has been a stance I have always had, and I am not wavering. Okay? So that is where I stand on all of this. Now, there are things that you have to question with this team. You have to. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball. That was one of the worst performances I've seen from the Raiders. Okay? But I also think their first 2 games of the year, they were outstanding. So to sit here and say they're collapsing, they're failing, I think the team collapsed on Sunday. But Patrick Graham has done nothing but give us a resume of adjustments, repairs, fixes, those type of things. So as far as I'm concerned, just like last week with the offense, with Geno's 3 interceptions, I said, you know what? You're going to get, if Geno is a top 10 to 15 quarterback, and oh, by the way, I still believe he is, and I'll get into that in a minute statistically and factually. We're going to dig into all this. He's going to have games like last week. That's just going to be the reality. But look at this, okay? Yesterday, Geno running for his life. The offensive line couldn't have blocked a bologna sandwich. And yet, Geno Smith goes 19 of 29, still, 289 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 5 sacks, and 132.7 rating. If you think the Raiders lost yesterday because of Geno Smith, I don't even know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're thinking. And as I went back and watched the film, they may have lost this game for a lot of reasons. Geno Smith was not the one. He was back to the Geno of week 1, which I told you I thought he would be. I think this is the Geno that you're going to get 75% of the time. So if he goes out later on this year, and he will, and has a bad game like last week, meaning Chargers week, I'm going to tell you, okay, this is what you get with Geno. But, the reality is 19 of 29, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 132.7 rating, and 5 sacks. And not just the 5 sacks, dear Lord God, he was, and that's not you, that is literally like, dear Lord God, the guy's going to get crushed. He ran for his life. Now, to the game, go watch the video. I said to him, Geno, it looked like you were running from your life from the beginning. No excuses. Okay? I'm absolving Geno, especially after watching the film. A much better performance than I thought he had. This is why you got to watch the film, and sometimes you just, until you know what you're talking about. All right, Trey Tucker, 9 targets, 8 receptions, 145 yards, 3 touchdowns. I'm absolving him. Brock Bowers, 5 targets, 4 catches. Now, I am going to say this. They're not going to play Brock Bowers if there was any chance that he hurts himself further. So there's no chance of that now, meaning the injury he currently has. Could he take a big hit and get another injury? Yes. But at some point, do they ask themselves, do we just shut him down and let him get healthy? Or is a 75% Brock Bowers better than a no Brock Bowers? That's a fair question. I don't know the answer to. But Brock still wasn't the reason. The one touchdown, a healthy Brock, I would maintain to you, would make that every single time, would make that catch. But still, he's 4 of 5. Kobe Meyers, 3 catches on 4 targets, 63 yards. I thought he was terrific. But I'm sorry, it's hard to get the ball downfield. It's hard to get the ball in places. Now, I am going to be critical of play calling here in a minute, but I totally, it's hard to go do a 7-step drop and go deep when you're running from your life. Literally, the moment the ball is snapped, you're under pressure. Okay, then let's go up and look at Ashton. 17 carries. I like that. I want Ashton in that 20 to 25 range every game. I don't want to hear, well, we're trying to work him in and use an NBA or a baseball, pace. I don't care about that. It's not the NBA and it's not baseball. This is a rookie guy in a season that you're not a playoff team. So what in the world are you thinking? Listen, I love Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator. So this is a disagreement I have. It's not a fire the guy. I think he has done, especially when you start looking at this, the offensive line certainly needs to get addressed. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Because it is visibly gone back. But so this is not I hate Chip Kelly or I think I'm smarter than Chip. I don't think I'm smarter than Chip. Chip's forgotten more about football than I have ever known. I'm going to give him, Patrick Graham, and Pete Carroll tremendous respect, not because I'm kissing anyone's butt, it's because they've earned it. And if you can't disagree with people without being disagreeable, then you're the problem. Okay? I want Ashton in the 20 as a minimum run count. Okay, there were holes that the offensive line did make. There were things that they did do good. And then there were some runs he made that they did not do their job. But he's physical and he runs them over. And backs like Ashton get better as the game goes on. That is their nature. They are workhorses. They are punishers. If you DVR'd the game, grab yourself 2 bottles of Pepto-Bismol like John Madden used to do when he was the head coach and he was struggling with an ulcer, and go rewatch the game and just watch Ashton. Watch a couple of those runs where, the guy is constantly getting hit in the backfield, but his physical nature, it's a punishing style. I realize many of you are young. You don't remember Earl Campbell, Jerome Bettis, the Natron Bomb, Franco Harris, among others, who got better as the game went on. Physical backs do that because they then they run behind their pads, they punish the defense. All of a sudden, there were plays that you saw yesterday where you cannot tell me those Commanders are not in a hot tub and a cold tub today because they got gentied. Where he lowered his shoulder and gave them a welcome to the NFL moment, and many of them were veterans. He is a physically imposing back, and you picked him at 6 overall. 6. I'm not asking for the guy to run it 45 times. So I'm going to say this to you. I didn't have a problem with Chip Kelly's play calling. I would have liked to have seen some more carries for Ashton. But the part that failed yesterday was the offensive line. I'm sorry, when you go back and watch the film, I'm not putting this on the receivers. I'm not putting it. And here's the thing. There were runs with Labe. There were runs with Zamir where they're getting hit in the backfield. I don't care who the running back is. You could be Larry Zonka. You could be Earl Campbell, Walter Payton, Emmitt Smith, Barry Sanders. It doesn't matter. Marcus Allen, Bo Jackson. I don't care. Remember how Bo used to get better? And I'm not saying Ashton is Bo, but that's that same punishing style. I get it. But if you can't get first downs because your offense can't block a ham sandwich. So had they gotten more plays, I mean, if you look at this, they had 55 plays for the day. That number should have been 65. So Ashton would have been in the 20s. I don't have a problem with Chip. And you say, well, wait a minute, just a second ago you were talking about I want to see him 20 to 25. Yeah, we would have yesterday. Quite frankly, I think you can make an argument there were less plays because the offensive line was so bad, but that may have been some of Chip's best play calling. I don't have a problem with Chip. I got a problem with the offensive line, and I love the big uglies. So now we got to talk about Brennan Carroll. Got to fire Brennan. Nepotism. Got to get rid of Brennan. Okay, tap the brakes. If that's how you feel, I respect that. But I'm going to tell you something. You may remember, and you can go back and look at the podcast. I was the first to report that NFL people were telling me if Pete came, he was bringing his sons. Because that's what I was hearing from NFL people. And I asked people point blank, tell me what you think of these guys. If you don't like Brennan Carroll as the offensive line coach, that's fine. I think after 3 games, I can understand you being concerned. But if you already decided he's a failure, I'm not there with you. And no, I'm not saying it because I'm trying to kiss Pete's butt. I don't need Pete Carroll's approval to do my job. But I do owe it to Pete Carroll, and I owe it to you to be fair. Brennan Carroll is a highly respected coach who did not have to leave Washington and could have went a lot of other places because he carries a ton of respect. That is factual. That's 100% correct. Can you look and say, wow, after 3 games, his offensive line has been great? No, but it's been 3 games, and there's a reason you give 21. There's a reason you give coaches. He only can coach what he's been given. Now, when it goes backwards, I have no issues with that. Those are germane questions. But I 100% categorically can tell you, and I would tell you if I hadn't heard it. Enough people were very complimentary, both in the college world and the pro world, of Brennan Carroll. I can tell you right now, after 21 games, I may have a completely different opinion. But I can tell you right now, I'm supportive of it. A, because you have to let your head coach pick his own staff. And 2, because I talked with enough people around this league that there is respect. But remember this. I told you Nick Saban said to me once, you're only as good as the players you coach. And imagine how better you look as a coach when you have better players. That's the reality. That is the hardcore reality. Before NIL, when Nick Saban was getting all the great players, it was great. He's wonderful. He's great. But when NIL came along and Alabama started losing some players, there were people in Alabama that wanted to get rid of Nick Saban. Oh, the games passed them by. The point I want to make to you is this. Raider fan has every right to be frustrated with that collapse that you saw. There is no excuse for your team to have collapsed. Going on the road and losing was not the issue. It was how they lost that should have made you angry. But everyone fails. And so to make a rash decision, you're qualified to do that as a fan. I'm not qualified to do that as an impartial media member. I have to look at the soup and make an assessment. So would I want to see more from Ashton? Yes. And I think in previous games, you can make an argument you should have seen more. Not so much Patriots because they were just stacking the box. But certainly against the Chargers. But when I look at yesterday's game plan and the number of plays they had, I'm sorry. I don't have a whole huge issue with what Chip did. He's the coordinator, and he coordinated. I have no issues with the offense outside of the offensive line. I watched the film closely. You may remember last week against the Chargers. I told you I went back and watched the film, and certainly they were not great, but there were things I thought they did well. I couldn't find I could find some plays where they did well, but for the most part, the offensive line in totality gets a big F. And so for Brendan Carroll, who is the coach of that unit, you got to give an F. But it doesn't mean like the guy's forgotten how to coach or he's a bad coach. After 21 games, we may have a whole different opinion. You may not. You may have it after 3. I may. I have never hesitated to tell you when I did not like a job a coach on this staff was doing, and I never will. To the point that I've had the Raiders come and ask me to back off on coaches before. But I'm not going to pile on because it's going to get me likes and clicks. That's not integrous. And it's not fair to you, the fan. So the offensive line, you can find things that each of them did okay yesterday. But overall, none of them had a good day. Now, a lot of people were screaming, where's JPJ? Where's JPJ? Where's JPJ? Let's address that right on. JPJ was involved in a battle. Kappa goes out injured the last part of camp. JPJ wins it. I told you all along I expected JPJ to be the starter, and he was. Okay, then JPJ gets a concussion. There was no physical work last week, so they made the decision, we're going to go with Alex. JPJ was dressed. So if Alex had gone down, they would have played him. Pete said afterwards when we asked him about JPJ, it is still an open competition. But the point of the matter was this. They are the coaches whose job is on the line. And let's just get to brass tacks. They didn't believe that JPJ could outplay Kappa or they would have put him in. That's just the reality. Maybe they didn't believe in JPJ because he didn't have contact all week. Pete said it, and I'm going to tell you right now, Pete has not given me one reason to believe he's a liar, and I will not call him one. But when your entire offensive line is struggling and you've got 5 offensive linemen, does anyone who's truly fair believe changing JPJ out for Kappa would have fixed the other 4? Come on now. That dog don't hunt. That's not reality. But clearly, the offensive line had a horrible performance. I thought it did some things really good against the Patriots. Some. I thought the Patriot performance, in my opinion, was I think you could have made an argument for as high as a C+. Maybe a B-. I can think of a couple things. And I think you could have argued that it was a C, a flat C. So B- to a C. And I think any grading in there was unfair based upon your opinion. I thought against the Chargers, I would have given it probably just a flat C. Yesterday, F. Hey, Hondo, F. Yeah, but what about F? Okay, but Hondo, if you F, failed. The Washington Commanders spent more time in the Raiders' backfield, I think, than Geno Smith. I mean, if I'm Ashton, if I'm Geno, if I'm Dylan, if I'm Zamir, if I'm a wide receiver coming in motion, if I'm a tight end coming in motion, if I'm the ref, I'm like, whoa, what are you guys doing over here? Ball is snapped, they're there. Oh, by the way, I think they're still on the Raiders' side of the field. F. Jordan Meredith, who I like as a person. I don't need to say that. I like all of these guys as people. They're all really good guys. Okay. I like Jordan Meredith, the football player. I understand where they want this offensive line to go. I understand the athleticism that they want here. They believe at this point right now, at the time of this taping, that Jordan Meredith is the guy they want at center. They want to be a more athletic line. After watching the film, they may say, yeah, that dog ain't hunting. Let's move Jordan back to guard, move JPJ to center. I don't know what they're going to do. They may say it's not going to work. But if that is what they want and that is their conviction, then they don't need to make a change, because too many times I have seen this organization respond to criticism of the fans. This is why you have an adult, future Hall of Famer is Pete Carroll. And if Pete Carroll says, listen, I'm staking my resume and I am staking my reputation on this is the offensive line I want. I've got young players I've got to develop. I'm willing to take my lumps in a year when we're not a playoff team. Okay. That's why I'm going to give them 21 games. I'm okay with that. Pete Carroll deserves that. You may say, but we don't, we're fans. Yeah, but you can't judge Pete Carroll on the previous 22 years. That's not fair to Pete. But Pete may sit down and say to Brendan, listen, Chip, listen, I know we want an authentic line, but I mean an athletic line, but this is not working. And if he says it is, or at least it's going down that course, I want to go back and I want to tell you something. You asked Pete Carroll to come in and change a culture and lay a foundation for winning. If this is how he thinks it needs to be, so be it. If I was doing it and he has forgotten more about football than I know, I'm going to go line up like you're seeing Jimmy Harbaugh do with a big, monstrous, physical offensive line. And I'm going to get road graders. That's me. They want to go athletic. Great. Let them go athletic. Both win. And if they say, you know what? Listen, we're sitting here in a non-playoff year and we're going to take some lumps. All right. I can understand that. But when you are coming in and taking your lumps, then I think you need to come out and tell that. Raider Nation isn't stupid. And I do not believe Pete thinks you're stupid. But what I'm saying is come out and say, hey, we're used to 10 wins. We're a 10-win team. But if that's how you feel, then you need to say, but you know what? We understand we're going to be a consistent 10-win team. It's probably not going to be this year. We're going to take our lumps. Say that. I think you can put a big balm on this wound of Raider Nation. Come on, tell him that. And I'm taping this before his press conference today. Maybe he will. But if you say, no, you know what? We just don't think that Jordan's going to make that adjustment. You put him back over at guard. Put JPJ at center, whatever. Elmar DJ Glaze the Mule. 100% believe in that kid. 100%. He had a very bad game yesterday, and I'm not wavering. I'm not going to waver on the kid. He hasn't even had 21 starts yet, and he's got a lot of really good tape. Dylan Parham, that was the worst performance I've ever seen from Dylan, and he's played a lot of great football for this team. Those are concerning. Colton Miller has played a ton of great football. If the Raiders put him on the trade market, there would be a massive market for him, including in the division. I do think it's fair for Pete to sit here and say, all right, boys, listen, I get the Jordan thing. I understand the Delmar DJ Glaze thing. JPJ, fine. But why is Alex and Dylan and Colton? What happened here? Give me answers. These are all fair questions. And let me just tell you something. I had one guy tell me this summer about Pete Carroll hiring his son. He said, anyone that thinks Pete is going to be easy on them doesn't know Pete. And this guy said, an NFL guy, if I was his kids, I don't know that I would want to go coach for him, even though I know he's a great dad and they love their dad, because he's going to be harder on them than anyone else. And I can tell you that I believe today Pete Carroll is being harder on them than anyone else. But I'm going to read you a text. Let me find this text, please bear with me. This comes to me from a very well-known NFL person. Water is wet. Raiders offensive line needs to be replaced. Wow. Atrocious. 4-man schemes getting to Geno. No running lanes, whatever. Bad football. Here's another observation from this is a well-known NFL person. Brock Bowers isn't the same with the knee injury. His athletic, explosive abilities not there. So I get it. I understand the offensive line has to be addressed. It can't be swept under the rug. I don't think Pete's going to. I asked him a question yesterday that was a very fair question. Sometimes coaches can see things coming. And I asked him the very first question, go watch the video. Pete, did you see it coming? No. If I saw it coming, I would have done something to fix it. I had someone say to me, boy, I didn't appreciate the way he just blew off your question. He didn't disrespect me one bit. That is him, no excuse. The guy stood there and said, it's on me. Then Geno, Pete Carroll said it was his fault. Oh, it was mine. You may take this as BS. You can say whatever you want. And if you really feel it, then I really encourage you, don't read, listen, or watch me. Because if you really believe it's truthful, then that means if it were truthful, I would not be a person of integrity. So why would you waste your time reading, watching, or listening to someone that's not a person of integrity. If you believe I'm carrying their water, don't read, watch, or listen. But there was no excuses yesterday. I have been around this franchise, and there are excuses. I have been around this franchise, and there are looks of defeat. I have been around this franchise and seen it when the crater's there. They're not even close to a crater. And I'm going to tell you something else. You kept the film in yesterday, even when every single time something happened, the Commanders' defense was in the Raiders' backfield, and they're just fighting. Geno, he made some athletic plays yesterday that aren't going to show up on the stat. He made one where he goes to his right, rolls to his left, he's under duress, and just gets rid of the ball. No sack, no loss. It was an incredible play that won't show up in the stat sheet. And he made more than one of those. After watching that film, clearly they've got to address the offensive line. They have to figure out 3 games in, guys going backwards. That's no bueno. But at the exact same time, I'm not wavering on what I think this team is. I think they're better than last year's team. Now, can you go back and make some personnel questions? You absolutely can make some personnel questions. And I think those would be completely fair. I mean, you're sitting here with a ton of money on your cap. And I understand you had a new coach, you had a new GM who said, hey, let's keep some of this money and figure out what we have. Let's not burden ourselves, okay? That's being cap smart. But I think there are some real personnel questions that you can have. And I'm okay with that. But overall, yesterday was a crappy game. Going on the road, losing. And remember, Washington was in a championship game last year. It isn't like this was just the Jaden Daniels show. And let's credit Dan Quinn for a minute. He essentially took Chip Kelly's playbook from Oregon and said, okay, Marcus, we're going to ask you to do what you do well. We know the Raiders have a great pass rush, so you got to get rid of the ball. Bam. 1, 2, 3, gone. 1, 2, 3, gone. I saw people yesterday sending me emails. The pass rush sucked. If you're getting rid of the ball quick, there isn't going to be a pass rush. That's good coaching. And I'm going to tell you right now, every single team that's well coached on the Raiders schedule is going to do this boom, boom, gone, boom, boom, gone. They had 6 sacks through the first 2 games because other teams were doing more dropping. Dan Quinn said, no, that's not who we are. We got Marcus Mariota there. Boom, boom, bang, get rid of the ball. Okay. That's good coaching. That's not on the defensive line. That's not on Robbie Leonard. That's not on Patrick Graham. Now, you can sit here and absolutely say they ran for 200 yards. Yep. The run defense was not good. I was talking about pass rush. Okay. But you went on the road and lost to a team that's more talented than you. There's no shame in that. But you got blown out. Now, I'm going to give a couple of things here. You couldn't convert on 3rd down. It was brutal on 3rd down. The Raiders were terrible on 3rd down. And so all of a sudden now, you 3 and outs. Bam, defense back on the field. Bam, defense back on the field. Let's talk about total possession here because I think this is going to actually surprise you a little bit. It was 31-28, so it wasn't that's what I mean. I didn't think you'd be just surprised. It was basically 32-28. So they had a 4.4 minute where they kept their defense and the Raiders' defense was out there. That hurts your defense when you can't pick up 1st down. That totally hurt. 3rd down efficiency. Raiders, 3 of 14. 3 of 14. 3. Basically 21% on 3rd down. Goes back to an offensive line. So I think you can absolutely point out mistakes that were made. But even at the end of the game, you saw guys hustling, guys fighting, guys not trying to save their bodies. Terrible performance. The worst in my 6 years. But after going back and watching the film, I don't think the sky is falling. I don't think there's any reason at all to have given up on this staff. I think they've got to answer. They absolutely have to answer. His staff is going to have to show Raider Nation the beginning of progression. But when it's a year that you know you're probably not a playoff team, you're trying to get a view who's part of the long term. Where do we have to adjust? This is why I give 21 games, because you have the first year to know what you have. Then you go address it in the draft. You go address it in free agency. And then you see how they look coming out the next 4 games of the next year. It's what you do. Disappointing performance. That's a fact. But to me, I explained why I look at the defense differently. This is their first very bad performance, and I thought the pass rush was even a little bit better than I thought it was. And the offense, I don't have any issues with Pete Quiet Dexter. I have no issues with Chip. I have issues with the offensive line, and Chip oversees it, so I guess I do have issues with Chip. But I also think they deserve the attitude. Okay, are they saying we're going to take our lumps? And if they are, they need to tell that to the fans. They need to make that clear to the fan. Frustration is germane and real. And they got to fix it. But to call this anything other than what it was, which was a collapse, would be unfair to you, and it would be unfair to them. Because it's what it was. The game was a collapse. Season is far from over. 14 more in the first year. Frustration is warranted. In this scenario, I do not believe panic is. It's my observation, talking to NFL people, watching film, and trying to be as fair as I can be. Thank you for listening.